You got questions? We got answers. It's time for the mailbag.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow. He's your host, James Rapien. It is time for the midweek, not weekend, it's regular season, the midweek mailbag here on the Locked On Bengals podcast, where we take your questions and we answer them for the better part of the podcast. Before we dive into the mailbag, James, just a quick piece of news. The Bengals practice squad protections are available. They protected 4 players again this week. Rennell Wren, Trayvon Henderson. James, the other 2?
I was not ready for that, but Mason Schreck and Keaton Sutherland wasn't ready at all. James, the other 2. What way to throw me a curveball here. That was Tom Glavine in his prime. Strike 3. I'm out of here. By the way, the other thing, Twitter's being dumb. So if you notice, the Locked On Bengals Twitter account is suspended. It's nothing we did. So stay following it because it's going to be back soon. And we're working with the highest ups, you could say, to get it fixed. But that'll be fixed. And in the meantime, you can follow us at James Rapien and at Jake Liscow.
Good plug. While we're making plugs, another good opportunity to remind you, if you're on YouTube, hit the thumbs up if you like what we're doing. Hit the subscribe button if you want to get those notifications. Hit the bell if you're listening on an audio platform. Follow the podcast and get it anywhere you listen to your podcast, and that helps us. We really appreciate it. Now that the Bengals are winning some games, the podcast is doing some crazy numbers we've never seen before in the regular season. So we really appreciate the support. And if you're new, we're 5 days a week. So please do follow along if you like what James and I are doing. James, before we dive into the listener questions, I have one question for you before we get into the mailbag. As you know, I booked my ticket to Cincinnati for week 4 yesterday. I have 3 restaurant stops that are for sure happening at least once: Skyline Chili, Jeff Ruby's Precinct, and Soda. I really want to try Soda. People have talked it up so much. I love Italian food. What one other place do I have to get to if you could only pick one?
You like chicken wings?
I like wings. Yeah, I like wings.
Like or love? Like you love some good wings?
Yeah.
Okay. Then Knockback Nats has the best wings in the city, maybe the best wings in the state, because I've frequented Cleveland over the past couple of years, and I have a bunch of friends in Columbus, and I've been there recently too. So Knockback Nats would be one. And if you're going to Soto, Boca is right next to Soto. I believe they're owned by the same. And I was recently at Boca, more recent than Soto, but since I've been back, I've gone to both. Me personally, I think I might like Boca better. So it's really close. They're both great. But those would be 2 places. They're both downtown. Knockback Nats obviously is a different, it's like a sports bar, but it's got the best wings. They're grilled. They put the sauce on the side, and they are just bomb. And it doesn't just go for you. It goes for anybody coming in town over the next few weeks or months for Bengals games.
I got a lot of different barbecue places. I asked Twitter today. I crowdsourced, of course. I do like barbecue. I do recall there being some pretty good barbecue in Cincinnati. The real challenge is going to be, how do I not eat Skyline for every free meal? Like, you think about it, like one of those dinners, we're going to be at Paul Brown Stadium for Thursday Night Football. Wednesday night, I don't know if that's going to be free or not. James and I are going to be working on doing some sort of event when we're both in the same city for the first time in a very long time, probably. We've probably both been in the city of Cincinnati before at the same time. But we're going to do some sort of event, hopefully, when I'm in town, and that'll be before the game. So there will be a few free meals. The challenge will be not going to Skyline for those meals. But James, let's dive on in to our mailbag questions here as I look to my other screen and get our questions pulled up. The first question we'll take today comes from Finland, or at least a Finnish Bengals fan. The Finnish Bengals fan, in fact, at Hude_FI on Twitter, would like to know, why the Bengals, or if the Bengals should be considered favorites against the Bears this week.
Well, they aren't technically, right? It's a 3-point line right now, according to BetOnline.ag as we record this on Tuesday night. But I will say this, it's at Soldier Field. And the way betting lines work usually is it's 3 points for the home team. So last week when the Vikings, and I saw them, they were up 3 or 3.5. They were favored by 3 or 3.5. And the Bengals were at home. That's brutal because that's saying on a neutral field, it would be around 6 or 6.5. In Minnesota, it'd be 9, 9.5. And so in this instance, really all it's saying is that the Bears and the Bengals, they feel like they're evenly matched, but the Bears are at home, so they get 3 points. And so, yeah, they're favored, but I think you're onto something, Finnish Bengals fan, because to me, you look at these teams, who has the better quarterback? I think the Bengals, and I don't think it's necessarily that close. Even if Justin Fields plays, I still like Burrow better than Fields, even though there's more unknown there. It's not like the Bengals offensive line is the only crappy offensive line, right? And I'm not saying the Bengals offensive line is crappy, but that's the perception, right? And so we'll see about that, but they might actually have the better offensive line. I think it's fair to say they do have the better offensive line. Obviously, we know what this Bears defense is, probably better, at least on paper, than the Bengals defense, but it's close. So to me, yeah, I think they should be favored slightly. And coaching-wise, by the way, Matt Nagy, just as many question marks, if not more, with him when compared to Zach Taylor and company. So I think it should be close, and that's why you're seeing the 3. Basically, what Vegas and the odds makers are saying is, hey, on a neutral field, these teams are evenly matched. The game's at Soldier Field, and I wouldn't be shocked at all if that line falls a little bit with the way this offense played last week, specifically Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, that connection with Joe Mixon.
And just the injury situation with the Bears offensive line doesn't help anything. They lost 2 left tackles after they were already down a left tackle after they let Charles Leno walk in the offseason. So there's that. There's also, you mentioned the BetOnline 3-point spread, just the money line. It's like the closest money line in the NFL, just straight up. So the way that the markets see this game is the closest of the week, at least right now. So that is worth noting. And look, the thing that the Bengals have to prove to the markets if they want to be road favorites in a game like this against a team that's like relatively close to them on paper in a lot of ways, very, very similar team to the Vikings in a lot of ways, right? But probably with a worse quarterback and a worse running back, similar strengths, similar weaknesses. The Bengals need to be a little bit more consistent. If they had gone out against Minnesota last week and they scored that additional touchdown in the fourth quarter or in the third quarter, you know, if Joe hits Mike Thomas on that corner route that he throws just a little bit too far in front of him, or Mike Thomas doesn't flatten his route out enough, one of those two things happen. You know, then the game is a much more convincing win. Maybe that moves the markets a point or two, but it does take a little bit of time for these things to happen. And it's hard to imagine that the Andy Dalton-led Bears are leading a lot of optimism in the markets. I would imagine that like some of this is speculation that Justin Fields is going to start. And like there's some of that every week baked into the Bears and baked into the odds given to the Bears is like, oh, Justin Fields might play this week, might surprise somebody. And James, we've gotten through one listener question and my question for you. And it's time to get to the rest of the questions coming up in a minute.
BetOnline is the number one spot to go for all your sports betting. We just use them right there, right? If you think the Bengals are going to kick the crap out of the Bears this week, well, then you might as well go to betonline.ag, make that first deposit, and make some money while you watch the Bengals do exactly what you think they're going to do. And it's not just the Bengals. It's all pro in NFL football, in college football as well. So maybe you think the Bearcats are about to run through the Hoosiers this week, or you think they're going to run through Notre Dame in a few weeks. And I hope you're right, by the way. Then you can bet at betonline.ag. So you can use your mobile device or use your laptop or PC and sign up today, and you're going to get a 100% welcome bonus. That's 100. Whatever you put in, they're going to give you 100%. That's free money. Take advantage of it by using promo code NFL100. So throw in $50, use promo code NFL100. Now suddenly you're going to have $100 to work with at betonline.ag. It's the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts.
James, I'm going to jump down our list of questions a little bit here because we have a question that is very related to the concept we just talked about with home field advantage. And the question was specifically about the home field advantage that was present in Cincinnati on Sunday. Alan Hollinger asked, how big is a new and improved home field advantage for the Bengals? Do you think that the Bengals would have still won that game on a neutral field? And much has been made of the Bengals home crowd by Bengals players and coaches alike in the season opener.
I still think it's tough. I mean, you could argue that they wouldn't have won it, right? But I think they outplayed the Vikings, and it shouldn't have came down and been as close as it was. Right now, did the crowd have a role in that? Absolutely. I also think the fact that the Vikings haven't played in front of fans really in general, like a packed stadium since 2019, I think that matters too. And Zach Taylor really hammered that home when we talked to him last Friday before the game. He's like, look, their center hasn't heard a full packed house yet because last year he didn't deal with it. And he wasn't started 2 years ago. And I think he's a second-year guy or he just wasn't playing. And so
Zach got that wrong. Zach got that wrong. He did play. He played in the Superdome, I think, a couple years ago in a playoff game. He's in his third year. So Zach got it wrong. It was a whole thing on Twitter today. But anyway, continue.
Either way, it worked.
Yeah.
Like either way, the crowd, I mean, it was ridiculous. I was shocked at how many false starts on the first drive.
Yeah.
Mike Zimmer must have yanked his hair out and wanted to just drive to Verona where he has his ranch and just throw back all the beers he had. Like that's how frustrated he probably was with his team. So would they have won still? Probably, but I'm not trying to take anything away from you, the fan that cheered your ass off. And it was a great environment. I thought you were really loud. At the same time, I think when it was gut check time for the Bengals and it was 24-21 and then 24-24, they did a good job of responding and kind of showing everybody in attendance that they weren't going to go away and that they were going to make the plays needed to win the game.
There's a group of guys that I play video games with online, a couple of them that I know in person that live in my town, and then some people that they play games with from Indiana. And one of those guys in that group happens to be a Bengals fan, listens to our podcast, and he sent me a message today. And he's like, I hope the crowd is loud. He's also going to the game in week 4. He's like, I hope the crowd's loud. We generally don't have a loud crowd. I'm like, man, from what I heard, the crowd noise was crazy in that home opener. And like the evidence is the proof is in the pudding, right? Like the Vikings had to go to a silent count. They tried to go with a normal count. They couldn't do it. They kept false starting like 5-6 times. So, I think it mattered for sure. If the Vikings don't have that awful first half with like 70 holding penalties and another 50 false starts, that game might go a little bit differently. And instead, it gives the Bengals a chance to get out in front and manipulate the game script into their favor. And yeah, they could have closed the game better. They should have closed the game better. A lot of those old, bad habits, I would say, about closing games still there. I would still like to see that get better. But, they had a chance to put the game away and, get one more first down, 3rd and 4. You have to run you didn't have to run the ball there. They could have thrown the ball there, but they chose to run the ball there. You get a first down, the game's over. Right. Mm-hmm. And maybe you're not even in that situation if your crowd doesn't get you out to that start. So I do think the crowd was great and deserves some credit for sure for game 1.
No doubt. I totally agree with you. And you brought up 4th down. That is a perfect segue into Boomer Drew's question. He says, I believe there's a distinct difference between aggressive and stupid. I believe you know where he's going. The 4th and 1 on our own 30 was stupid. And it looks like a good portion of the team felt the same way as it changed the course of the game. Your take. And part of that, I think he was referring to Jesse Bates saying that, Bates was like, yeah, I was pissed off when Zach decided to go for it on 4th and 1. And look, I understand it. And I think Boomer's being blunt. He's also right because there is a fine line between aggressive and stupid. And I disagree with the call at the time. Was surprised that they actually did it. I listened back to the radio broadcast. Dan Orton and Dave Lapham were also surprised that they actually snapped the ball and they weren't just trying to get the Vikings to jump off sides. And I think if you're going to do that, it's already stupid. But if you're going to, right, it's crossed the line of aggressive. And it's just, you have all the momentum. They haven't done crap to you, right? All day long, really, offensively. You've been able to contain this offense outside of a couple bad Apple plays, literally. And so I would have punted. But if I was going to go for it, and this is the part I think Zach is going to get, and does understand. He said it after the game. If you're going to do that, you're going to have to be more creative because the defense is going to be ready, because it opened the door for them to come back and potentially steal the game. And they damn well did, near did. And so that's the part of it where Zach, being a coach that hasn't won, being a young coach still, and now finally having a team that I think and he might not admit this, but for the first time feels like he can win, he's going to learn. And I think I'm confident he's going to learn from that and make that adjustment. And there are certain things that I would say, oh, it's up in the air. That's not one of them. I don't think you're going to see Zach cross that line too many more times from aggressive to stupid. You can still be aggressive without doing that and going for the kill and winning 42-7, I think he threw out there during his Monday press conference. So whatever the case is, I get what he was trying to do. It was just a little too Madden-esque for real life.
There's a situation in the game where you go for it from your own 30 when you're winning. That situation is either later. Well, it is. It's later in the game. So Joe Goodberry, by the way, liked the decision to go for it from their own 30. I don't agree with Joe there, but he points out that Bill Belichick once went for it from, his own 28 or something, up 6 points. But there's only 3 minutes left in that game. You punt the ball difference there. Yep. The other team's just going to go down and score. They're going to go 2-minute offense. Either going to go down and score or not, but the field position doesn't really matter. And so this is a difference, right? You're doing it in the third quarter. You're doing it from the 30. So for me, if you want to do something like that in the third quarter, be closer to midfield, even if it's 10 yards, if you're doing it from the 40, or if they give Jamar Chase a better spot and it's, 4th and a half yard instead of 4th and a full yard. Cause I did think they gave him a bad spot. I thought he was clearly actually past the 30, but that's neither here nor there. So the issue I have is more that, he in his head is framing it, and the way he's talked to the media about it is like, I'm going to be aggressive. This is who we are this year. We're going to try to dictate the way the game goes, which is fine. But then he didn't go for it on the 4th down in the 4th quarter, where Joe Mixon doesn't get it on 3rd and 4. He gets 1 yard. And for one, if you're going to punt the ball, I would be in favor of a high percentage throw there, even a shot play. Like, even take a shot, right? Because I've said a number of times now, when they were running the ball, the Vikings are selling out to stop the run there. You throw in one shot play, you think about it. The play that Joe Burrow missed to Mike Thomas, that was 3 runs and a pass on that drive before they did that, play action toss boot to the right. And it worked. 100% worked. The defense sold out on the run. Joe Burrow, nobody was chasing him in the open field. He has a wide open Mike Thomas, and he misses a throw. Why not call up another one of those shot plays when you're running the ball and the Vikings are selling out? So where I am is, yes, he made the right decision. It was really the only decision. Very obvious in overtime to go for it there. There's no way you're punting the ball when he chooses to go for it, and they end up doing the great play action play to CJ Uzomah. Credit them for execution there. But the decision is easy. Where I have issue with it is the other time they really should have gone for it is at the end of regulation. And, maybe Minnesota goes down and scores, but, you can set yourself up. And this is all kind of shot in the foot, right? When they go run, 2, big runs, and then Mixon gets stuffed. And that play right there where Mixon gets stuffed, I'm thinking like, man, yeah, you're running well, but all it takes is 1, and now you're punting. And so that's where I was thinking the shot play could have come in. And because after you rip off 2 10-plus yard runs, the Vikings are, of course, selling out to stop the run. So that's where my issue with some of the decision-making is. But, I'm in favor of going for it on 4th down just a little bit more selectively.
Yeah, they have to – or in honor of being fair, because we don't know, and they've downplayed this, but I do wonder, excuse me, I do wonder if Burrow's ankle, because it seemed like they got super conservative, like start of the game conservative there after he gets dinged up. And he said it was his ankle. I don't know, but I assume he wasn't lying to me, because I asked him straight up after the game, was it your ankle? And so I do wonder about that, because really outside of the throw to Uzama, they were not. There was no real downfield anything. And that's just not this offense. It's not going to be this offense, I don't think. And so that to me is weird, and I do wonder if that impacted things.
That is something to talk about. So let's wrap up that conversation about the neutral situation passing, because there were some interesting numbers that came out about neutral situation passing today across the league. So let's get into that before we dive back into the mailbag and finish things up coming up next.
Does this sound familiar? You've got one device that lets you catch the game live, another that lets you stream your favorite shows, and you're watching sports highlights on your phone, and you've got your neighbor's best friends log in for the good stuff. Yeah, I think we've all been there at one point or another over the past couple of years with the world of streaming. Well, we have a solution to get your TV back together. It's called DirecTV Stream, and it brings all of your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, shows in one spot. So no more looking for the remote or buying a new device. Get rid of the clutter and the confusion. Get everything together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more, directtv.com. It's that simple. Go to directtv.com, check out DirecTV Stream. Compatible device required. Content varies by package.
Built Bar's 9 delicious flavors are waiting for you to try them. If you haven't gotten on the Built Bar train yet, I mean, James is patting his biceps on YouTube if you're watching. There's no time like the present. And they've got a flavor for you. Coconut, almond, cherry, raspberry, mint brownie, peanut butter brownie, double chocolate, salted caramel. There's something for everybody. And their limited time flavors like grasshopper cookie or coconut brownie chunk are just fantastic when they come available. If you don't know what you want, you can get a mix box. You'll get 2 of each of those 9 flavors. And not only do they taste great, coated in that 100% real chocolate, this is a protein bar, not a candy bar I'm talking about. They're healthy too, with 17 grams of protein, 130 calories, and just 4 grams of sugar. Go over to BuiltBar.com right now. Use promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off your order. Again, that's promo code LOCKED15 on that great selection of protein bars at BuiltBar.com. You'll save 15%. James, I mentioned I wanted to continue the discussion about early down pass rate over expected. Really quick before we finish up the mailbag, Computer Cowboy at Ben B. Baldwin on Twitter put out some numbers here. The Bengals, compared to the expected rate of passing the ball, which is based on your down, distance, field position, time left in the game, score differential, and win probability, were the pass saddest team in the NFL in week 1. Last year, if you looked at this chart, the Bengals in neutral situations were the pass happiest team, or were in the top 3 of pass happiest teams in the NFL. This time in week 1, the Bengals passed the ball 19% of the time, 19% less of the time than a neutral game script would have you believe. And that was obvious to people watching. And one of our followers, James, also tweeted me some interesting thoughts, and he went back and looked at the scoring drives from the game. And on the touchdown drives for the Bengals, they passed the ball in neutral on early downs, specifically. On early downs, they were passing the ball more than they were running the ball. On their drives where they didn't score, or their field goal drive, they started by running the ball on early downs more than passing the ball. So you do wonder perhaps how much of this is to do with Joe Burrow and this conservative game plan and, you know, the concerted effort to run the ball more, not pass the ball 60 times in a game as Joe Burrow seemed to do all the time last year. But I think it's interesting when you look at the results, and the results were that they didn't score points when they ran the ball in early downs. And this was, Mark at mjones472 on Twitter put it together. They threw on 55% of early downs on their touchdown drives. They threw on 26% of early downs on their 10 drives that ended in a field goal or no score. So game script has something to do with that. The selection bias has something to do with that. That includes a 2-minute drive, and obviously 2-minute drives, you're not running the ball as much. But very interesting stuff here when you look at the play selection, and this is something that a lot of fans have been very critical of.
For sure. And it was noticeable throughout the game. I mean, from the jump, I think we all were like, man, it's a conservative game plan. We talked about it on the past 3 shows now. And then towards the end of the game, it was the same thing. And that's it, because they had 3 straight touchdown drives. End of the second quarter. What was it? Well, the first drive, I remember Jamar Chase had 2 receptions, his first 2 receptions. And then T. Higgins has the touchdown catch. The next drive, 50-yarder to Jamar Chase, right? With a nice throw to Boyd, I believe, on one of those. And so it's like, yeah, the passing game, that's the potential. And I think they were really easing Joe Burrow back. That you really can't convince me of anything else. And the scary part is the fact that he took as many hits as he did, because they only threw it as many times as they did, 27. The good news is they were more efficient when you look at like yards per attempt, 9.7 career high for Burrow, 20 of 27 career high in completion percentage, I believe, for Burrow, and he had a career high in passer rating if you care about those things. So the good news is you're seeing those marks and high efficiency when he is throwing it versus last year when he had like 300 yards on the 61 attempt game. The problem is that they didn't throw it enough. And I don't think that's going to be a problem moving forward, assuming that ankle and everything's okay health-wise for Joe. And we have no reason to believe it's not. Zach said he was going to be fine. Then if that's the case, then I expect him to throw it more on Sunday against the Bears.
Worth pointing out as well, they were really good running the ball. They were having some issues diagnosing where pressure was coming from in the very confusing fronts that Mike Zimmer presented. More on that in a little bit. We have a couple questions on Trey Hopkins we might talk about. And maybe, James, this kind of, you listed off Joe Burrow's stat line there and his efficiency. Meanwhile, PFF Seth, who is a really good analyst for PFF, who's pissed off a lot of Bengals fans today, tweeted some disparaging remarks about Joe Burrow's game, saying it was one of the worst games. He actually said it was the worst game he's played in the last 2 years, which is not true because he played Baltimore last year. But he had some concerns.
And Pittsburgh.
About Joe Burrow's game, yeah, and Pittsburgh. But maybe tomorrow, James, if there's nothing crazy in the news, we go ahead and break down Joe Burrow's game in a little bit more detail, because while it was very good statistically and there were some things that were really, really good, I also actually can see where Seth is coming from in terms of some of the concerns. I'm not going to go out and call it, the worst game he's played in 2 years or anything, but we can get into the details and talk about some of the pluses and minuses that maybe we've glossed over a little bit to this point. So we'll see if we have time for that tomorrow. Before we finish up the mailbag, James, with a couple questions about Trey Hopkins and this offensive line, Kevin Brown, and we've been asked this question quite a bit. KD Brown 357, James, would you like to revise your predictions for the year?
All right. I'm going to address everybody. Everybody on YouTube, everybody that listens to Locked On Bengals. I've gotten it from others on my other YouTube channel, Cincinnati Bengals Talk. And Kevin Brown, I don't care if you're Elizabeth Blackburn or Mike Brown or Katie, it doesn't matter. The bottom line is, you're right. I picked the Vikings to win, and they damn near won. There are going to be times where I get predictions wrong, and I might pick the Bengals this week. You know what? Andy Blandy Dalton might kick the Bengals' ass and beat the Bengals. It's possible. It's the NFL. And you know what's not going to happen if I pick the Bengals or heck, if I pick the Bears, which I might do this week, and then the Bears win, I'm not going to show up on Monday and say, see, I told you, and tell everyone. Like, it's just not that. So I'm not bothered by it. I just think it's hilarious that people care that much about my prediction. And look, Jake doesn't do predictions. I will do them every single week, and I'm not going to stop doing them. But I'll tell you right now, there are going to be Pittsburgh games, Baltimore games that, barring something unforeseen, I'm probably taking those teams. And if the Bengals beat them, it doesn't mean that I regret my pick. It might mean I'm wrong, but I'm going to try to make the best pick at the time. And that's that. And so I hope that settles it. So no, I'm not going to revise my prediction. It's still 7-10. They beat the Vikings. I had them beating the Bears. What if they lose to the Bears? Then they're no farther ahead than I predicted at the start of the year. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they're 10-7. Hell, I hope they're 17-0, because then we We'll have so much damn fun covering a historic Bengals team, Jake. But until that happens, I'm going to predict wins and losses as I see fit, because otherwise, what do you want? You want me to just cheer for the team and put on Bengal stripes? Well, that's not happening.
Yeah, I think that's an important clarifying point, just to defend my co-host here for a second. He's a journalist, guys. He's a beat writer covering the Cincinnati Bengals and doing the Locked On Bengals podcast with me. I am certainly a fan. We're both actually rooting for the team. It's in our interest, right, for the team to play well, because our podcast, frankly, you guys like it a lot more when the Bengals are winning games and they're doing things that are fun. So in that sense, we're both rooting for the team, but you got to remember that James is doing his job as a professional here. And while I might be a fan, anybody that's been listening to this podcast for a long time knows that I don't pull my punches. James, let's get a couple more questions here. We spent a lot of time outside of our mailbag questions, so we'll go a little bit long today, fitting in a couple extra here at the end. Andrew at mylife.net would like to know how the coaching staff can protect Joe Burrow from pressure up the middle until Trey Hopkins gets back to speed. And before I let you jump in and talk about Trey Hopkins here, I just want to point out that a lot of the issues the Bengals had on free rushers up the middle were not on Trey Hopkins. They were not on Quentin Spain. They were not on Xavier Su'a-Filo. There were a couple that were on running backs. Joe Mixon went the wrong way on one sack. There were a couple that were they slid the protection the wrong way. There's a play that there's a clip out on YouTube I retweeted, and I was like, hey, offensive line guys, what's going on here? And what it seems like is the Bengals slide protection right, and they have 4 guys over 3 on the left. And so they slide right, and then you end up with 3 guys over 2 on the left. Sorry, when they slide right, you end up with 3 guys over 2 on the left. That means 1 guy's coming on unblocked. And that's a protection call. So that's not on the offensive line. That's a protection call. And so, yes, Trey Hopkins had a couple of whiffs, and James, I'll let you talk about those, and we'll see if he does get back up to speed, and he's coming off that ACL. But the caveat here is the Bengals don't have to play Mike Zimmer again this year. Yeah, there are difficulties identifying where the pass rush is coming from against other teams they'll play, but Mike Zimmer makes it harder than 95% of NFL defenses to diagnose properly pre-snap, and he got them in a position where they were wrong a couple of times, and that's a big part of it more than any individual performance.
I think Zach Taylor tries to be honest with a lot of what he says to us, and then there are times where he just can't be, and it's probably a 50-50 when you're the head coach. Well, after the game, when he said, thank God we got Mike Zimmer and the Vikings out of the way week 1, and we were able to get a win, I think that was very accurate in exactly what not only he thought, but the entire coaching staff thought and the entire building thought, because we know how people think, from Mike Brown on down, in that building, think of Mike Zimmer. And so, yeah, I think it was a challenge. And that's the crazy part about it is, yeah, the sack numbers are bad, and the fact that Burrow got dinged up is bad. But that might be a 1-week thing that happens anyways. And to me, specifically with Trey Hopkins, I would have played him more in the preseason if he was ready to go. I would have played Burrow more in the preseason. So this doesn't happen where it's like, is Trey done? Is he not? Like, from a fan perspective. Well, I'll tell you, in the building, they still believe in Trey. And this is the week where I think we're going to learn a lot. Does he have those whiffs? Because I don't really remember Trey having many whiffs last year. I just don't. And we saw 2 against the Bears or against the Vikings. And are we going to see that against the Bears? That's what I want. If he's just competent, well, then the interior offensive line is probably at a C- type level as a whole. And with pretty good tackle play, probably B+ if that's what you're getting, which I think is a fair expectation, a reasonable expectation, then your offensive line should be pretty good. So Trey, there's some concern. And I can't help but think back to all the Austin Writers of the world and people like that, where you could bring in a free agent just to help, as you're getting Trey Hopkins back as insurance. Well, now you don't have that. And Billy Price wasn't the answer, and they stole BJ Hill. So I don't want to hear about that. If you watched our Tuesday show, you saw how much I laughed at the idea of Billy Price not getting in for the Giants. But yeah, I think Hopkins will be okay. But he's certainly got to iron out some things. In his first game back, it was obviously a struggle at times.
The concern is it doesn't get easier until week 4. Akeem Hicks with the Bears, Cam Hayward with the Steelers. Like it might be an ugly start to the season for Trey. But if he's not instantly losing on swim moves to Michael Pierce, the Akeem Hickses of the world, the Cam Haywards of the world, those are hard matchups for Trey. He struggles with size, he struggles with strength. We'll see how he does in the next couple of weeks, and you hope it gets fixed. And more than that, you hope they get the protection calls sorted out, because you can't have free rushers in the A and B gaps, and Mike Zimmer's going to generate those, and you got to find ways to try to clean that up and get that sorted pre-snap, and we'll see how that is going forward. We also had some questions about Samaje Perine in the mailbag we're not going to get to answer today. Some questions about Drew Sample. The only thing that I'll say there is it's a similar answer to Trey Hopkins, right? Like, even if those guys had rough games, they're veterans, they've been around, it's one game. Don't over conclude from week 1 is something that, I'm going to say every year as long as I'm doing this podcast, and we'll see how it is for the next couple of weeks, right? Just like Jamar Chase, right? Like, small sample size, ask me in a month. And right now we're not quite to a month yet. We got a couple more weeks, but I'm ready to say, yeah, guys, what are we even doing? Freaking out about one game or one preseason series. So we'll see how the next few weeks go for these guys. Maybe Chris Evans gets more reps, maybe not. We'll get a feel for that. We'll see what direction this coaching staff wants to go. And tomorrow we cross over with Lauren Cox from Locked On Bears to start getting into that Bears game preview. Looking forward to that one. Until then, Bengals fans, that's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Hoo day, and have a good one.